Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Kirsten Takashima, and I'm part of the programming team here at Prima CC. We're happy to have you join us today, and I'm excited to introduce you all to our speaker, Dr. Rebecca Berger. So, Dr. Berger started her undergraduate education at East LA College and then finished her degree at UCLA. And she went on to attend Charles Drew University at David Geffen School of Medicine at UCLA. Dr. Berger completed her family medicine residency at Kaiser Permanente in Fontana and is now physician in charge of a family medicine clinic. She became a mother at age 15 and is now a mother to four adult children. Taking from her own experiences as a teen parent and domestic abuse survivor, she participated in the prestigious Albert Schweitzer's fellowship program while attending medical school and designed a program working with young parents in East LA. Please welcome Dr. Berger.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Um, that was a very nice introduction. I'd just like to say, tell you a little bit about my journey and where I am. I am currently, as you said, an attending a family medicine physician. I'm at Kaiser in San Diego, and I'm currently the physician in charge of my clinic. Um, a little bit of background. Today I just want to share with you the hardest parts of my journey and show you how they've helped me become who I am and how you can do the same. I was born in New Orleans and I moved to LA when I was 8. My childhood was, very rough in a lot of ways. I had a mother that had a lot of mental health challenges, and my dad wasn't around. My stepmother was quite abusive towards me specifically. So, it was a very chaotic childhood growing up. Um, in that respect, school made sense to me. And it was one of the things that brought me comfort. It was one thing that made sense to me. Math and science specifically made sense and had right and wrong answers. And in the chaos of my life, it was something that I gravitated towards. I also found security in the teachers at school. And so that's where I excelled. I had dreams of becoming a doctor, but with the unstable nature of my home life, I definitely, when I became of an age where I stayed out of the house as much as possible. I became pregnant at age 14 and had my daughter when I was 15. I finished out my high school education through home studies and really put my dreams of becoming a doctor on the back burner. This was something that, felt like it was a distant dream by that point. I had other challenges to rise to, such as raising my daughter. After high school, I ended up getting married at a very young age, and that relationship was it went from one abusive situation to another, and so that was also another challenge. I had 3 kids by the time I was age 24. And it was after I left my abusive situation that I was, which is easier said than done, but once I got there, it was a new beginning for me, a new awakening, and I decided to go back to school. I had to start from, very basic classes and get my general education. So I went to community college where I absolutely am so fortunate to have started my educational journey. I went to East LA College, and I was able to find mentorship there, and the smaller classrooms were ideal for someone with me and my challenges as a parent. I ended up getting in leadership at UCLA College, went on to advocate for other students, even went to the state capitol to do some advocacy work there. It took me 4 years to get through my community college journey, and then I transferred over to UCLA. I finished my bachelor's degree there and then went straight to medical school. Um, so, that's the overview. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges that come with being in school in general, but having the added challenge of having kids throughout the journey, having all of the chaos of my childhood and working through those things and learning how to be an adult on my own. All of those things became things that I grew through, and I wear them as a badge of honor now because they make me a better doctor, a better person in society. I'm able to really relate to my patients in a way that I think that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
That was an awesome introduction to your background. There's some questions that are kind of like uh, trickling into the chat, and I can kind of start asking them away. So first question is, when did you transfer to UCLA, and how did you balance that with having kids? Did your kids go along with you?
When did I transfer? After I had done 4 years at community college, had taken as many classes as I could at the community college level, it was time to transfer. Um, One thing that I was very fortunate to do was I think that applying as a transfer student was actually very helpful in helping me get into to UCLA. And I was able to secure a nice scholarship that way as well. Obviously, there has to be merit behind that, and the grades need to be there. As far as balancing the challenges, it was, there were times when, like, my sister would be the one to drop my kids off at school or pick them up from school or watch them while I studied. It was quite challenging to find time to study, but I did it, there was times when I was sitting at my daughter's softball game and I was studying in the stands. That was the way that I got things done, is whenever I could.
And what advice would you have for women who went to through having children during like medical school and residency?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, everyone's situation is unique, and everyone's resources are going to be different. If you have family members that are available, that's always a good place to start to help with your kids. And finding ways to look to the community as well. I had, my kids were during the summer months when I was in school, my kids were not, and, I had summer camp resources. So the biggest piece of advice I can say is to look around. There are lots of programs, but sometimes you have to do a little bit of searching to find those. But asking is a really good place to start, asking for help.
And our next question is, um, how do you stay academically competitive and confident while attending community college, especially like when you're comparing yourself to traditional pre-med students?
I found that going through mentorship programs, there was a peer-to-peer STEM program at East LA College, and I think most, if not all, community colleges have something similar. So there was someone that was already going through the process of applying to medical school or in medical school there to help guide me and tell me what classes to take. Taking your grades very seriously is definitely important. It can't stress that enough, and so that helped keep me competitive. My GPA was quite high when I transferred, and I really worked really hard to maintain it by doing those things, taking the time and prioritizing my studies over really anything else. I didn't have much of a life outside of school for a little while. MESA program. Yeah, that's the name of it.
And what helped you stand out in your medical school application, especially coming from a non-traditional college path?
Um, I really thought that going into school, I wouldn't say I was embarrassed, but I thought that my challenges, that I had hardships that I had gone through, would be make me stand out in a way that I didn't want to stand out. But they really became ways of showing on my application that I was able to endure and persevere through those challenges, rise to the occasion with my grades, And I think that made me an even more competitive applicant than someone that didn't necessarily have those challenges going into medical school.
And are there any other programs, any specific resources or support systems besides MESA that helped you succeed at the East LA College or and your later transition to UCLA?
Um, I did reach out to my counselors at each school, so just regular academic counselors at East LA College. Once I transferred, I reached out to my specific science department counselor at UCLA to help guide me through that. There are lots of different, since I've been at UCLA, there's been the development of lots of different programs. I know Me Mentor is a program that really helps nurture and mentor pre-med students. So I would reach out to those. And if anyone ever wants to contact me, I can put you into contact with some local resources in the LA area.
Yeah, there's also UCLA CCP where they're actually one of our partners, and they have counselors that pretty much, I think, 30 community colleges around UCLA. And they also do application support. They have counselors that come on campus. They also have student leaders that have gone from those schools and transferred to UCLA and are getting paid to come back to those campuses. They have summer programs. They have campus visits. They also do this big conference every April, I think. So they do a lot of things, and we put that on there, and we also repost a lot of their events and things on our social media. So
Great. I'm glad to hear all those resources are there.
Awesome. So another question that kind of like follows up to that, is there like anything that you had to change in your transition from community college to going to UCLA, like in your studying or in your like parenting, like strategies and ways to like balance those two? Like, was there any massive change that you had to do when you transitioned between community college to UCLA?
Yes, you go from being in a very small pond to a very big pond, and there's lots more fish there. So these classroom sizes are much larger at a university. So that was a big adjustment. The way that I try to help distinguish myself was, one, I talked with my professors one-on-one when I could. I went to their office hours. I found that to be very helpful. And personally, I had a longer commute when I went to UCLA, so I used that time to listen to things in the car, like lectures. I would listen to, now they have lots of different podcasts, those types of things that you can listen to. So I utilized that time in a way to maximize my learning ability. I still had my responsibilities to go back and forth and be home by a certain time and get dinner on the table for my kids. And so that was the only way that I could get that done. There were times when, I would stay at school a little bit longer so that I can, maximize my studying there and take advantage of office hours there. So, in that respect, I had to find different childcare avenues during those periods.
And then to kind of pivot from that, what advice would you give to someone who has faced rejections from medical or nursing school?
Keep at it. Um, some of my best friends had to apply more than once to medical school, had to take the MCAT more than once. I would say most of the maybe like half of the students that I went to school with had taken the MCAT more than once. So if you don't do it, if you don't succeed the first time, then just keep at it. There's post-bac programs, there's lots of different ways to strengthen your application. One thing I would say is do not get too distracted and do like a totally down nothing year. If you're going to take a year off to kind of regroup and do those things, make it a very useful time, get some clinical experience, volunteer. I volunteered at a free clinic during time when I was at UCLA Medical School to get some clinical experience under my belt. So, my biggest piece of advice is just to keep at it. You will get there.
I also heard this quote that if you haven't been rejected or failed means that you haven't really tried. I mean,
I like that.
so you're gonna get rejected, and I think it's not so much about like being able to like it's hard being rejected. I mean, you know, anything in life, from like dating to applying for positions to trying to sneak into a concert for free. I mean, those are all like could be, but the devastation level is very different. But I think being able to handle it and persevere and I think it reminds me of the Rocky movie. It's like if you get knocked down, it's how you get back up. And I think you just have to find mechanisms, but also being self-aware to say, okay, what things I need to change but rejection, everybody gets rejection in life,
Absolutely.
except Dr. Berger. Just
I have to have my share.
What are some things that you wish you knew during your medical school application process?
Um, I wish I knew more about the um the makeup of what residency is, because I surprisingly got some questions about that in my interviews, and I didn't know what I didn't know, and so I felt like that was a hindrance to me. So I would make sure that you do a little research on just the basic kind of progress through medical school, residency, and attending, like what that is. I think that'll help strengthen and show that you've had some research. So that's one thing I wish I knew. And I've been the interviewee for medical school, and I wish I knew at the time what they were looking for when I was applying. And because you kind of go in blind, you're not sure what they're looking for. And I think a lot of people are looking, in my experience, a lot of medical schools are looking for people with unique experience, with something to bring to the table that's going to make them stand out. And it's surprising things like a background in theater. It might be, make you a shining star on your application as long as you have those grades to back it up.
How important would you say is networking when pursuing medicine as a pre-med?
Really important. I went to lots of different conferences as a community college student and as a UCLA student. And I will tell you, when I went to apply to medical school, there were a couple of people that I ran into that I had networked with that recognized me, that were on the committee for interviews. So it's really important. And also be genuine with it. I mean, part of it is a little pretentious, you have to present your best self, but genuinely make it a point to recognize and remember who you're networking with. It'll pay off later on.
Did you ever feel imposter syndrome throughout your journey, and how did you deal with that?
All the time. I mean, there's still days where I still feel it sometimes, especially being the physician in charge. Sometimes I feel like, who let me be the physician in charge? I'm just kidding. I earned it. But yeah, I think it's kind of like this, what Jubin said, that, if you haven't failed, are you really doing it? It's kind of the same thing with imposter syndrome. It just shows that you have some self-reflection of knowing what you don't know, and wanting to evolve. Um, I have always taken the approach of fake it till you make it. That's, like, there's a reason why you're at the position that you're at. When I got into medical school, for the longest time, I said, do they know? Did they make a mistake? And, I had to remind myself that I was there for a reason. They saw my application. I was there for a reason and I rose to the occasion. And sometimes it's just going through the motions and faking it till you make it. But knowing that you're there for a reason. That's how I get through it.
And what advice would you give to someone who's also starting at the community college level and headed towards becoming a doctor?
Um, Lots of different advice. Uh, One is just persevere and know that your journey is going to look different than everyone else's. Your journey is going to be unique, and that's okay. I used to be, I used to worry that, oh my gosh, it took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree, 4 years at the community college, but that time passed by anyways, and I had a degree at the end of it anyways, and it is what it is. So that's my biggest piece of advice, is know that your journey is going to be unique. And then another kind of side advice is take a nap when you need to take a nap. Don't power through and think you're going to absorb anything when you are so tired that your eyes are falling down. So just take a power nap. That really saved me a lot.
Great advice. Great advice. And another attendee is they said that hearing your story is very powerful. They have a child and they're in an older, non-traditional pre-med route. And so they study while their kid is at swim practice. And so how much of your home life and parenting life did you share with admissions committees?
Yeah, that's a good question. I found a way to make my personal statement succinct enough, but also im- I was able to outline my story in a way that showed that I had these challenges, but I didn't go into super details of the challenges enough to give them a picture of what was going on, because you don't want it to be too lengthy. It was nice and succinct. And then it really, there are, I'm an open book myself, but I shared, anything that they asked me. I was pretty open about, but they don't get too personal in interviews. But I would definitely have people look at your personal statement over and over, people that know you, people that don't know you, so that if it's coming across as too much.
But I would just say that's kind of like who you are. I mean, you know, if a medical school would tell you we don't want you because you have a family, like, would you really want to go there? Or would they say that, leave your kid at the door and come to our school? Like, would you want to go there? I mean, obviously, it's not your whole story, but it is part of your story. And, I mean, it's one of those things that, like, you know, it is, it is your story and it is who you are. I mean, you know, I don't know. That's kind of, I mean, I come from a very different perspective myself, so it's kind of like, you ain't paying my bills, so. But anyways, that's
Yeah.
just me.
And like I said, I think a lot of the committees look at those things that you've been through, and if you've gotten the GPA to get your medical school application in there while having, your child, then that's admirable. And so they're going to look at favorably upon that for most cases. And like you said, if not, you really don't want to go there anyways.
Well, I mean, I would just say, like, you were the student body president while having kids, then having a very good GPA. So it's kind of like, I think that by itself is like, it's a pretty, powerful accomplishment. Most people can't even be the president of a ham sandwich. And so, I mean, I'm just saying, like, it's okay. Like, I don't like. like I said, somebody said a really great thing that, if somebody like doesn't like you, would you want to go there? Like, you know, like I don't know. That's just a question that I always ask. Like, but
And a kind of a follow-up question to that from that same person is, how did you handle leaving your hometown for residency? Did you bring your kids with you?
Um, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yes. How did you handle leaving your hometown for residency? Did you bring your kids with you?
I was actually very fortunate. I did not need to move when I went to medical school. And when I went to residency, I was able to commute each way. And so I was very fortunate in that respect. Um, However, I was willing to do that. I applied far and wide. I was just very fortunate to be able to get something close. So you'd have to know that going into it and have a plan of what you would do if you needed to relocate, like in terms of like childcare and how logistically that would work for you.
Did you feel that you received the necessary support from the institutions that you attended throughout your medical school and residency programs?
To be quite honest, for sure at community college and to a lesser degree at UCLA, but there were resources there. When I went to medical school, it was a bit more challenging because you need to keep up with all of the really hard challenges that medical school poses, and it's not geared entirely towards single parents for sure. So each level became a little bit more challenging in different ways. You just I had to go into it with a plan in terms of what I was going to do with my kids and how to get the studying done.
What advice would you give to someone who's barely started their medical journey and then they're just starting a family also at the same time?
Um, that's amazing. Yeah, same applies for younger kids and older kids. Just having a plan on how logistically you are going to study and attend classes, and how does that fit in with childcare and when you will study. You need to have that time set aside for, like, you have to prioritize the classes as much as you prioritize the studying outside of class, because that's where the real learning is. So having a plan for that is super important, but totally doable, like totally doable.
And how did you accommodate, how was your schedule kind of structured between school and your kids? Were you a full-time student taking STEM classes while also taking care of your kids like after class?
Yes. I treated it like a full-time job, and I was able to get some uh, like a work study job at the community college. And so I was there. I dropped off my kids at school in the morning, went to school all day, um, did my classes, did worked while I was there, and then when it was time to get my kids, I went and picked them up. Sometimes it involved me bringing my kids back to the community college campus with me. We hung out in the library. We both studied. I helped them with their homework, and I did my homework. And each semester or each quarter, I was taking it and figuring out what that plan was going to look like, and we got it done. So yeah, it was a full time schedule. You had to be really good at time management. And same thing when I went on to UCLA in medical school.
but I would just also add that as I raised both my nephews, so they will learn at what you do. And so, Dr. Berger, what are your children doing today? Can you share that? They will
Yeah.
only learn by what parents do. So brag about your kids now.
So my oldest daughter is now 31, and she is in school for her master's degree. She has a son also, and so she's doing that as a parent. And then my middle daughter is working on her PhD. So she's going to school full time as well. Super
And
proud of them.
Dr. Berger is only 29.
Yeah, let's go with that.
And what stood out to you the most about UCLA?
Um, the prestige of UCLA. I mean, it's a big name. Part of it was close to home also, but I I had gone there for a summer, like 6 week pre-med pre-dental program as a community college student, and it became my dream school. Like it was the goal. And so I think just the rigor of the academics there, the name, the hospital that's attached to it, the research that they do there, all of those things were just made it so appealing to me.
Was that Chapep?
Yes, I think it was called something different before, but yeah. It was cool. We got to go live on the campus for 6 weeks, and that was my first time like actually being on a university campus for any amount of time, and it was just a really cool experience.
They have a lot of great like summer programs at UCLA. There's so many like research programs and like things that kind of popped up over the years.
I also did a research program for undergrad students. This one was at Cal State Fullerton, but I think UCLA has something similar. Pretty much all the universities have something similar in the summertime.
Our next question is, how can you increase your chances of being accepted into a healthcare program? I'm assuming this is like more general to like for pre-med, for med school, for nursing schools, for PA schools.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How can you increase your chances of being accepted into a healthcare program?
That's a great question. I think one thing, obviously, the grades are very important. So getting all of the prerequisites, all of those down. MCAT score needs to be strong, or whatever professional school you're going into, their pre-admission tests. But clinical experience is really important as well. Somewhere in the middle of all of this, before I went back to community college, I was briefly a medical assistant, and I think that also helped strengthen my application, just having that. But even if you don't have that, find some volunteer opportunities. There's lots of free clinics that you can volunteer at, that will help strengthen your application.
And in line with the MCAT, what are some struggles that you faced while studying for MCAT and having kids? Because a lot of time goes towards studying towards the MCAT.
Yeah. Uh, I would, my friend was also going through school. She's an emergency room doctor now. Her and I were studying for the MCAT at the same time. And she was a single mom. We would leave our kids asleep at 5 a.m. on a Sunday morning and go study at Starbucks. Like those are the types of things that we needed to do to get our studying done. We would be, the kids would be in their practice on a Saturday, and we would be in the library studying right after that for a couple of hours. And it would just be a few hours here, a few hours there, but it all added up. And those are the things that we needed to do. And so find yourself a study buddy, and make sure that you are scheduling in as if it was a class, the study time for MCAT. I also did an MCAT prep class. I don't know how helpful it was, but there are some pretty good ones out there.
And since I know the story, what did you guys promise each other when you were studying for the MCAT after you were done?
One of the times we were studying for MCAT, we were like, when we make it, when we're doctors, we're going to go to Paris together. And that was like the fanciest thing that we can think of. And this was like oh, like 15 years ago. And we finally did that last year. We went to Paris together. So we kept to our word.
That's awesome. I love that. How do you how do you maintain like your optimism and like positivity when things get rough?
Yeah. I think it's one of it is a personality trait of mine. I have always been optimistic to a fault. And it's just been like a self-preservation thing because things got really dark when I was a kid. Things got really dark when I was going through a lot of the abuse stuff that I went through. But nowadays, I use the things that I've already gone through as ways to encourage me to get through the next thing and say, you've got through that saying, you've gotten through all of the hard days thus far, so you can get through this next one. So that's the way that I remain positive. But there's some days where you just want to lay down and cry, and that's okay if you need to just take a break and have a moment, but get back up. I also had my best friend, the same one I was talking about that we went to Paris, who on those days I can call and say, bestie, this is getting me down, and we're always there to pep each other up.
And was there a time when you felt stuck between giving up and continuing to pursue your dream of becoming a doctor? And was it kind of a similar kind of motivational thing where you're trying to stay optimistic, or you have that like your character trait where you're trying to push yourself during those times?
Yeah, there were a few like pivotal moments like that. I'll tell you one example. Um, It was actually during that 6-week program that I went to UCLA when I was an undergrad. It was at community college. Um, and I talked with one of the counselors involved in this program, and I asked if, I was just having a moment where I was feeling less able to rise to the challenge. And I asked her, is this crazy? Is this like a crazy thing for me to think I can do medical school with 3 kids? And in that moment, she said, well, I think you need to have a plan B. And that was devastating to me in the moment because I felt like she was crushing my dreams. And I was just such a fool for thinking this. I left that counseling session crying. But I called my bestie and I talked to her and I said, this is what am I even doing here? Like, this is ridiculous. Why do I think I can do this? And she talked me through it. She said, she doesn't know you like you know you, like everyone else knows what you can do and what you're capable of. So that was one of the more pivotal moments in my life where I had to decide was I going to listen to these outside forces or was I going to listen to what I knew to be true that I could rise to the challenge?
I love that piece of advice. I think that's like something that um you need someone there.
100%, yeah. Because there's going to be times where like you talk so negatively to yourself that it's going to feel a little hopeless.
Um,
I would just add this one thing too, and I think if you learn anything from this, it's important to have people that are going to support you and be there with you and for you, and not just surround yourself with negative Nancy's because, um, but also you need to have some friends that are going to be honest and truthful with you. And um, so I think like that's the part of it. But if you don't want to have yes people, but you also don't want to have people that crush you every day because then that's crushing.
Yes, and my best friend, she is that person that'll keep it real too, like, you know, lay it out when it needs to be laid out.
and this next person is asking, what associates and bachelor's degrees did you study for East LA Community College and also UCLA?
I actually did not get my associate's degree when I was at community college. I just got my general education. My my bachelor's degree that I graduated with at UCLA was molecular, cellular, and developmental biology. A lot of pre-med students do that one uh, because you end up using a lot of that information for the MCAT in medical school.
That's great. I'm also MCDB,
Yeah,
but yeah, plug for that.
nice.
Our next question is, what writing tips can you provide to help authentically tell your story, especially when you're like writing about your personal statement and then preparing for your secondary application?
Yeah, it's hard to talk about yourself. It doesn't come natural for a lot of people, and it certainly didn't come natural for me. Um, I had to refine my personal statement a lot, and I had to get feedback from people that knew me well and knew my story well because they were able to help me navigate and include things that I needed to include or trim away things that were excessive.
And um, what kept you motivated to return to medicine after kind of like having your background, and then was it like having that foundation in like math and science that you mentioned earlier that kind of influenced your strong interest in medicine, or what do you think, like was there like any like one point or multiple points where you decided that medicine was for you?
Yeah, I had an interest in medicine when I was a kid, and then life happened. When I went back to community college, I honestly didn't really have a plan. I was just like, I want to go back to school and kind of see what happens. I knew that I liked science, so I took a biology class. It was like a biology 101. It was super like a basic class. And that was it. I was like hooked. I was like, oh my God, I have to do something like in medicine because that was it. And at that point, it was like after that first semester that I had decided I wanted to go into medicine, but that I wanted to pursue my medical degree.
And this next question is more related to like the financial aspect of school. Can you share your how you financed your graduate school programs? Were you scared to pull out like student loans, for example?
Um, yes, I did not want to do loans. I was able to go through community college and my bachelor's degree at UCLA with no debt. I was able to get some scholarships when I transferred over to UCLA, and so that covered all my costs for my undergraduate degree. When I went to medical school, I had no choice. I had to do student loans, and a lot of people are left. Most people that go to professional school are left with that choice. So it's definitely something to consider when you go into medicine because those debts are can be really big. But that being said, there are a lot of scholarships out there, and so don't be afraid to seek out those scholarships because they can really be helpful. There were a lot of the ones that I applied to outside of like schools. They were just like there was like a women's group in the community. I got a $10,000 scholarship from them to go to UCLA, and that helped me tremendously. So look outside of your school as well.
This is a question I'm going to ask you. So you obviously didn't come from a wealthy family and you financed your entire education by having children. Have you financially struggled since you've been a doctor? Have you do you able to buy a house and travel and all those different things?
Um, I'm definitely not rolling in the money,
You're not a tech
but
billionaire.
right. But making six figures as a doctor does allow you to have those things that you want for stability. Like I was able to buy a house as an attending. I went to Europe last year. I'm able to travel a few times a year. So yes, I am still paying my hefty student loans, and I will be paying those for quite some time. But yeah. Um, I will say that as I was going through medical school, I did have to take on some credit card debt just because I had three kids. I wasn't able to like room with someone. I had to pay rent and keep a roof over everyone's head. And so that took me a little while to pay off once I graduated.
And this next question is there anything that you wish you knew before starting the medical school application process, as in taking the MCAT, taking those required classes and like medical school prerequisites?
Um, One thing that I wish I knew earlier on was, and I had someone give me this advice just in time for the MCAT, but was to take the MCAT as early as you can. You don't have to graduate with your bachelor's degree to get to do your MCAT, as long as you've taken those classes that you need the information for, like the physics and the classes that you need to have that information. Take the MCAT while it's fresh. And as far as going in to apply, one thing that I didn't know and learned along the way is that these applications have fees. So and they add up. So like usually the secondary applications, which you get for most of your applications, they add up. So there are fee waivers and scholarships out there for those too, but know that you will be paying upfront sometimes for those.
And you spoke about being focused on school. What extracurricular activities do you find interesting as a pre-med student or that helped you stand out while applying to medical school?
Um, I personally didn't really I had a lot of life experience, but my extracurricular time went into uh, my kids' extracurricular activities. But I will say, if you don't have those obligations outside of school, do what interests you. Like it will make you an interesting candidate, an applicant when you go in and you're able to talk about those things. If you love playing rugby or knitting or whatever it is, like if you are there talking about that passionately, it comes across as genuine and it also makes you a well-rounded applicant.
And this next question is about like clinical experiences. I remember you mentioning that you did some like medical assistant experience and then some volunteering as well. Did you do those? Were there any other experiences you did as well, or did you only do those during like community college and like UCLA?
I did the medical assisting as a job before I went back to school. So I had that under my belt. And then I did the volunteer at a free clinic, Venice free clinic, when I was at UCLA. Um, it started out, I was down in like the basement doing records in the medical office, and then I was doing medical assisting there. So that was my the extent of my medical clinical experience going in. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And how do you define success, or how did you define success at the beginning of your journey versus now?
Hmm. It's a great question. I mean, I think at the beginning it was getting the grades, knowing all of the work that went into getting the grades. So that was like my measure of success was my GPA and my grades. Now I celebrate the wins of like you know, personally, I love to share my story and inspire and mentor other people because I think it takes us all to have a diverse medical community, and that's how I celebrate my wins, or how I measure my wins is who I can help in the next generation.
I love that response. Do you know any dental students who went through a similar path as you?
Dental students. I have, yes. The answer is yes. So with that 6-week program that I did at UCLA, that's for pre-med, it was also for pre-dental students. And so they had experience on the UCLA campus and were able to also get that pipeline. So a lot of them had similar stories when going into with their challenges and going through community college and going that route through the university system afterwards.
We actually had someone who was a mom and started dental school at 40, and she spoke, I think, last year. Just if you go back on our events or on our YouTube page, you could find it. But she started dental school when she was 40 and her daughter was graduating college.
That's amazing.
And she went down to UCLA, and now she is a dentist, and I think her daughter is a physician now, or but you go back and watch it, and yeah, and she had some pretty interesting stories about her kids and school. So
And this attendee is a single mom herself, and she says she often feels guilt for not being there for her son because she faces long hours traveling from work to school, late night study sessions, early in the morning. And so she's wondering, how do you deal with mom guilt while pursuing your studies?
Yeah, that's a really complex issue, and I applaud you for doing the thing and getting it done. That's amazing. Um, I think part for at least for me was knowing that I was leading by example and I wasn't out doing something that was not productive and abandoning my kids in that manner. But sometimes it just feels not great. I balanced it with the times that I was, if I had like a short spring break or summer break and just trying to make the most out of those moments with my kids. And, now that we're on the other side of it and my kids are grown, they talk about it all the time about how inspirational it was to them. And they don't talk about the times when, when I wasn't there. So there's no way to get around the mom guilt, but just I'm telling you from one mom to another mom, your kids are seeing you and they are absorbing all of that example that you're leading by.
What made you decide to become a physician versus like a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, or like some other healthcare profession? Um, what kept you going for to become an MD versus like those other paths?
Yeah, I did consider like nursing. I had kind of like started out on that pathway a little bit at one point. I had considered PA school briefly. For my personality, I knew that I wanted to be at the table to make decisions and to lead. And so I felt like the MD route was where I could do that in the most fruitful way. Um, but all of those other careers that you mentioned are really fine careers to do as well.
And why specifically family medicine as a specialty?
Great question. Family medicine is kind of like emergency medicine in that you get a little bit of a lot of it. You get a little bit of everything. I mean, on an average day, I see, I'm dealing with a joint injection, I'm doing women's health care, contraception, taking care of back pain, all of the things that you can think of. And family medicine, I knew that I could deliver babies. That's one of the great things about family medicine is that you can take care of pregnant patients, you can deliver their babies, you can take care of the baby and the mom and the grandma, the whole entire family. So that was one thing that was really appealing for me. My other career choice was surgery. I really loved surgery. I just made the decision during that time that that residency was a little bit too long for me in my journey with my kids.
And this next question is from a student parent at Oxnard College trying to get into nursing school, but their child their childhood dream was to become a physician. They're asking if you have any advice for them.
Is the the goal to get into nursing school or into medical school?
It seems like they are trying to get into nursing school, but their dream was to become a physician.
I say that, weighing all the factors of what's going into your decision to being either going to medical school or nursing school, do what's right for you and your family, and what's going to set you up for the most success. I know some nurses that are making almost as much as doctors, so I mean, nursing is a great career as well. But again, my biggest piece of advice is just to keep going, and if you are not able to get in the school that of your choice this year, reevaluate and see where you can make your application stronger and come back and try again.
I would just add that, like, becoming a nurse is not like s- selling yourself short or there's anything. There are some great nurses and they make really good money, but how you practice and how you approach your career are very different. Where as a nurse, yes, you have those responsibilities, but you're not making clinical decisions. Like like Dr. Berger with as a family physician, like the buck stops with her. Like she makes those decisions of patient outcome and all of those different things. And for some people, that's like a really important thing to do, and for some are not. So like it's kind of like what's gonna make you happy. Like you're gonna be 75 one day and you don't want to lay in bed and saying, "Oh, I wish I could have done this." Like you're gonna have to make that decision of what's gonna make you happy. And knowing that the roles are different, not that one is better than the other, but also like what do you want to do? Like if you want to do international medicine, if you want to do public health, and so there's all of these different ways, that you could do it, and I think both are needed. Like we definitely need more nurses, we definitely need more doctors. So but I think the most important thing is, you said there was your childhood dream was to become a physician. If it's today the same dream, then pursue it, because you don't want to be 75 and not not do it. So, but nurses are excellent. So,
Yeah, that's a great point. There's the clinical practice is going to be different for each role, so deciding which one is priority to you is also really important for that decision.
All right. So this next question is, given the current social situation with student loans and attacks on health equity, do you have any advice for non-traditional low-income applicants?
Yeah, it's going to be the landscape of some of the new changes that are coming down the pipeline are going to be challenging with financing medical school and professional school in general. Um, there are ways to get personal loans like outside of a financial institute, an academic institute. It has to be weighed heavily because those are generally going to end up paying more in the end. But one approach that I would highly recommend is taking out as few loans as you can. If that means like rooming with someone or rooming with multiple people so that you can cut down on your living cost while you're in professional school, that can keep your loan amount down and make it more financially feasible for you to get through professional school.
well, my favorite Persian quote is "This too shall pass," and I think that looking at this today, but this is not always going to be the same, and if you want to be part of the change, there's many things you could do to change that. So that's all I'm going to put out there. And we don't. what is it? We accept the things that, we can change and things that so, what's happening today, we have a power to change it. So I'm gonna leave it at that.
100%.
Did you participate in any research during college? And if so, how did you get involved without having prior experience or connections?
I did the research for undergrad students program. I was given that resource through the MESA program at community college. So they hooked me up with that. So there's those pipelines for that. And so that involved going over a summer time while I was in community college and getting that research experience under my belt. I presented it on a poster. I was also, through the MESA program, able to present my research at a conference in Salt Lake City. So um, those that program was golden for me in order to help me get my extracurricular experiences to enhance my application and to enhance my experience.
Yeah, and from September till December, we'll have about 4 or 5 sessions about how to get summer programs, summer research, and research programs. So if you're in our listserv or check our social media, we'll be announcing those. And we do it every fall. So we bring in people from NIH, we have people from various programs to come and talk to you about. So uh, check it out.
This next question is, as a woman, they want to pursue medicine, but they're scared too because of their plans of having a family in the future. What advice do you have for women who want to go into medicine?
You can do it all. You can just pursue your dream and that stuff will fall into place as long as you have a plan. And in all stages of my experience, there were people starting their families. There were people starting their families in undergraduate, in medical school. There were people starting women starting their families. There were women starting their families in residency. You can do it. So please don't let that please don't let that stop you from pursuing your dream.
And more women are going into medicine than men. I mean,
We
it is the better gender anyways, but that's just me.
I agree. But we have we have a long way to go, I think, in our country, and this is not to get political, but we have a long way to go in terms of like maternity and paternity leave coverage, but you can still do all of it. Residency programs allow for leaves to maternity leaves. All of those programs have ways to work with it.
And this next question is, can you give advice on how to prioritize like your family life, studying, while not feeling guilty, like having a balance? Like, how did you prioritize those different things in your day-to-day activities?
Um, some days are easier than other days. Uh, y- there were times when I needed to shut off the school stuff for myself and focus only on what the kids were doing, and then there were other times when my schooling took priority, and I handled what I needed to handle as a parent, and then school was that priority for that time being. So um I tried not to get too wrapped up in looking at the entire picture and being like, what are the next 4 years going to look like in terms of that part of it? I took it quarter by quarter and figured out like how I'm going to prioritize each uh factor in my life, the kids and schooling. So that physically meant sitting down and writing out a schedule of studying classes and kids activities, getting their schooling done and activities, extracurriculars. So it's not easy, but it's doable. And knowing that some days the balance is going to look different than other days. But again, I think also keeping in mind that your kids are looking at you as an example.
Do you have any tips for how to communicate with admissions committees in terms of how single parenthood can lengthen someone's undergraduate journey, but it doesn't make them like a lesser applicant? Is there any tips on how to communicate that well with admissions committees?
There's ways to include it. One, it is implied. When you are applying and you're putting down on your CV your timeline of things, and in your personal statement you talk about having kids, it's implied and it's understood. But there's also ways to include that in your personal statement and also during interviews. And most people are parents that are on the admission committees, not everyone, but you know the ones that are not parents know parents and understand that a lot of times the non-traditional path is longer, and that's okay.
Would you say that being a medical student, a resident, or an attending was the most overwhelming for you?
The first year of each of those was difficult.
Each season has a
Yeah,
reason.
yeah. And when the first year I became an attending, COVID hit. So that also added a layer. But each new thing, just like I remember when I started junior high and I was like, this is going to be so hard going from elementary to junior high, and the first 6 months was an adjustment. So I think they all have their challenges. But in terms of like getting sleep, I think residency was the most difficult.
So this student already graduated from university and as a non-traditional major and is asking how would you recommend getting involved in research? Would you say it's required? What are medical schools looking for in regards to research experience?
Yeah. Um, I don't. I would say reach out to your university that you graduated from to see if they have any research opportunities, or even through a post-bac program if needed. Um, but I do highly recommend getting some research. It's not absolutely mandatory, but it does add a lot to your application because it shows that you've gone through the scientific process and know that. So I think it is important.
We have a
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go
we have
ahead,
a
David.
talk that one of the deans of admissions, that I'm going to put that in the chat, why research matters for this process, and if you want to go to medical school. He actually lays it out pretty well why you need it, so check it out.
And this next student, so they graduated with a 3.3 GPA in biomedical engineering. And so to them, their GPA might be considered on the lower side for the medical school application process. Do you have any recommendations on what they can do with that?
Yeah, I would recommend considering a post-bac program to uh, enhance that, um, and or getting some clinical experience before applying to medical school. So making sure that you have that clinical experience. Um, and y- while it's not 100% necessary, that the GPA is really gets your application read, and you want all of that good information, the clinical experience, all of those things read. So the GPA is really important, unfortunately. But so in that respect, I think a post-bac program might be a good option to explore.
This next question is, during your undergraduate years, what do you believe was, or which types of leadership experiences and medical experiences do you think were made you stand out in your application to med school?
When I was at community college, I was in student government. My last year there, I was a student body president. So that also led to, as I mentioned earlier, the advocacy work at the state capitol, like going and lobbying in the state capitol. So all of those things, I think, really um, uh, demonstrated good leadership skills, which is important on applications to medical school. Um, I did not do any when I was at UCLA. I was doing school there.
And how did you go about getting community service hours and shadowing experience? And do you have any advice about finding someone to shadow?
Um, I was able to get some shadowing experience through my networking, through going to pre-med conferences. That's a great way to network to get some shadowing experience. And I've had patients that myself as an attending that are getting ready to go to medical school or applying to medical school that have approached me to shadow or to ask me for shadowing experience. So don't be afraid to ask a doctor that you know. That's a good way to network as well. And I don't know if Jubin has any resources for that or not.
Yeah, we've done like 3 sessions about how to get clinical experience, and you just have to go back and watch it. There's like a couple ways you could do it. Don't go to, like, if you're like in LA, don't go to UCLA and try to do it because it's too big. But if you're going to a smaller hospital, but also we did this little thing in there where you just write these short little as statements with your CV, and you go drop it off at doctors' offices. And you got to do like 20 or 30, and somebody will bite. Um, Sending emails to doctors, unless they're under like 50, 45, 50, email is not the best way to do it. But also, like, finding emails is really hard. So some people have found letters to be really like a good way to do it, just dropping off letters at doctors' offices. The other thing is, if you speak a foreign language, just go volunteer and say, "Hey, I'm proficient in Spanish," um, and just volunteer that way. Scribing is another way to get in to a hospital. The big problem with getting into hospitals, just in general, clinics, hospitals, or anywhere that's a big organization, is getting cleared for your, HIPAA and your TB test and a bunch of other stuff, because it's a liability. So smaller practices may take risks. Bigger organizations are very risk averse. There's also other things you could do with, like, being patient transport. This requires having a CPR, and you get paid like our hospital pays like $25 an hour to be a patient escort, which, like, it gives you a badge, and you're like all over the hospital, and like you will literally run into doctors all over the place and get you clinical experience. You get to see a lot of people, you get to meet nurses. And I wish I would have that job, because it's a pretty cool job. You just kind of just, you know, cruise around the hospital and move patients around and things, and you're bound to find. So I would say those are the big things. And for me, it's like, I know, like, I do a lot of things. Like, I personally do spend a lot of my time volunteering and doing a lot of stuff for free, but I'm just not willing to go in a big medical organization to work for free. That's just me. Like they have a lot of money and there's a lot of things you could do. So like shadowing, scribing. Do you guys have scribes at your clinic?
We do not. Yeah, but there are some of the bigger organizations that do have scribes.
Yeah. Scribing seems to be good. The only thing that I personally is like scribing, you have to be like really fast typist. And if you're not one, then it's kind of challenging. So,
A
yeah.
lot of clinics are starting to do AI now as well for
Yeah, with the
like,
phone, yeah.
yeah.
This next question, if you're okay with answering, how old were your kids were when you went into medical school?
Good question. Let's see. My youngest was, I want to say 9-ish. The first year when I was in my first year of medical school, my oldest was graduating high school, and then my middle one was in junior high.
That's great. And this next question is, at what point did you start studying for the MCAT? Was it during your time like at UCLA or like afterwards?
It was while I was at UCLA. I had to get some of those classes that weren't available at community college, like my physics classes, before I could even start studying for the MCAT.
And kind of going back to like or going into like mentorship, is mentorship available during medical school for first generation students, non-traditional students?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. So there's lots of just like with undergrad, there's lots of different clubs that are available, pipelines for mentorship. There's lots and lots of different mentorship opportunities available for you during medical school. I remember during my first year in medical school, there was a lunch talk like pretty much every day. And there was another like society coming in talking about a volunteer opportunity or a mentorship opportunity. So there's lots of different avenues there. And there were a surprising amount of resources for like non-traditional students, but part of the challenge is finding the time especially in like in my case when I had family competing competing interests.
This next question is, what should a parent who is applying to medical school look for in a medical school? What makes a medical school supportive for students who are parents?
That is less readily available for you to be able to tell. I think that's a good question for when you are interviewing, you know, to see what kind of resources are available. Um, asking about maternity leave and or paternity leave, asking about housing resources. By the time a lot of people are applying to medical school, there are a lot that are just starting out new families, and so there's like housing opportunities. So that's one thing to look for. But that's a good question to ask an interviewer while you are interviewing.
What would you say were the hardest challenges you faced during medical school, residency, being attending?
The mom guilt was one, and we talked about that earlier. Uh, but also the lack of sleep, like the lack of downtime. Sometimes you're doing, at least in residency, you're doing overnights. Sometimes during medical school, you're studying late into the night, and you still have to get up and get the kids ready for school the next day, for example. For me, that was the biggest challenge. I did manage to be home most nights to get dinner on the table, like cook a dinner and sit down with my kids and have dinner. So it's doable.
What would you say are like our requirements, or like how many hours would you say you worked um as a like resident or attending versus like now? Like is it very different across different stages now that you're in a different spot?
Yeah, residency, residency, they work you very hard. Um, the hours have gotten better over the years. There's some like restrictions on how much the residency program can work you at a time. But I would go into it expecting in most cases you're going to be working at least 60 hours a week as a resident. Um, and when you're an attending, you can find it's much easier to find a job and find a job that is can fit the hours that you want to have, so you're able to um, shape it the way you want to shape it. As an attending now, I've been an attending for 6 years. um, I'm still working full time, and so I work no less than like 60 hours a week on average. But I do have the opportunity to change that if I want.
And or this question is also directed to residency. Would you say residency is bad as it seems? This participant is worried that they'll miss out a ton on their children's lives, and so they're just like wondering how they can balance those long work hours and then also being a parent.
Yeah, I don't want to downplay the challenges of the time that you spend as a resident, but it also depends on what residency you go into, like what field you go into. A family medicine residency is going to look a lot different than a dermatology residency, et cetera.
Or neurosurgery.
Or neurosurgery, exactly. Or surgery just in general. And that's one reason why I didn't go into surgery residency. Um, that being said, it's not, one week is not going to look the same as the next week necessarily. Usually rotations in residency are 4 weeks at a time. So you're not always doing the extremely long hours, even if part of your residency involves doing overnights or extremely long hours. So there's some balance there.
This is something, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but um, the more educated, the higher you go, the further you go, you have more power. So you have the ability to design what you want to do. And I don't know if that's correct or not, but I've seen people that have gone further into their education and their career that can set their own terms versus if you're working a minimum wage job, which you don't have a voice. Um, so I think like that's something that put that in the back of your mind as well. That you know, um, and for me, like I raised by myself two children, and I had to make the concerted choice. Am I going to be at every single one of their events? No, there's no way that I was going to be because I had to work and I had to provide. And but when I showed up to an event, I was fully there and I was, you know, jumping up and down and I was engaged. But also, I felt like it was important to have a roof over their head and food in their stomach. So I had to make sacrifices and I didn't have a choice. It wasn't like, I wasn't going to participate in an activity in their life because I was partying, but it was because I was working and trying to do that. And so, and you know, and being, by yourself, you make those choices very, very, like it's a very blunt decision that you have to make, and it's hard, but you know, it's the whole thing that they tell you in fitness. You, what is it? You play hard and you work hard. No, something like that. The work that you do will have some sort of result at the end of it. So, um, so I think like that's something that it's always in the back of your head.
And at the end of it, when you have a degree and you're able to have some financial freedom or time freedom, you can also, travel with your kids and do the things that you're working towards. So those are, sometimes a trade-off, but even during residency, you'll find time to, make the most of your time with your kids as well.
I know we're at time, so I'm just gonna ask like I'm trying to look to see if there's any different questions. How can someone tell when medicine is no longer the right path for them? At like one point, should one consider pursuing something else? Because there's like some good days, there's some bad days for every career. But how can someone do that for like medicine, for example?
That's a very good question. I think one, evaluating and being honest with yourself as to why you're going into medicine to begin with. If you're going in because, your parents want you to go into it, or you want the prestige of it, or, you have to go into, I think, any career for the right reasons. Um, and so even on, if you are going to medicine for good reasons, for reasons that you are true to you and you're passionate about, those days are that you question it are going to just feel like those days and not a, I need to quit medicine kind of moment. Everyone in medicine in general has those moments, and even, now, like, people have those moments where they question, was this the right decision? And those are on the really hard days. But I would also say that, talking it out with people close to you, because they can remind you of like why you went into it to begin with. And I think those are good reminders. And if you really cannot find a good reason, even after doing all of those things, then it might not be what you are truly passionate about. One of my daughter's teachers in high school had gone through medical school, started to go through residency, and discovered that wasn't right for him. And he became a math teacher because he was just, that was, medicine was just not right for him. And so, like, it's okay to change your mind if it really comes down to it. Know that also.
As an attending, do you think the journey as a physician is worth it as a mom?
Yes. 100%. Yep. I like, like any job, you have your gripes, but I truly love what I do. I truly love being at, being a physician in charge and being able to make these really high level decisions and having my voice heard. And so I don't regret doing what I've done. And seeing also how successful my kids are and the example that they saw, I don't regret that either. So I'm glad that I stuck it out.
Did you have any like regrets pursuing medicine at all? Like looking back on your journey?
Um, I will say that I have one regret. I have one regret in that I wish I would have become more educated and savvy on the financial aspect of it. They honestly don't really talk about it when you go into medical school. I remember like the first week of medical school, one of the deans said, "Oh, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out." And that was like the extent of it. So I think that I would give that advice, like when you go into professional school, whatever it is, just become educated on, on your choices and what that's going to mean down the line, because eventually you will have to, um, you know, uh, live with those choices and try to work those out. There's ways to like do like public service loan forgiveness and those types of things. So there's options, but just get educated on those things. That's one of the things that I regret not doing ahead of time.
So I know we're over time and we still have plenty of questions left. But let me know if you are open to like continuing asking questions or whenever you have to leave. Um,
Sure, I can answer a few more questions. I have to leave in like maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but I'm happy to answer any questions until then.
okay, awesome. Um, how was the transition in terms of science classes, like I guess rigor difficulty between community college and UCLA? How was that for you?
Quite challenging. I think more so because of the change in classroom sizes, going from like 20, 30 students to like 300 students was challenging. Um, uh, but the community college classes that I took, I think prepared me really well to take that next academic challenge. So, I think there are the content of the classes are not necessarily more difficult. It's just the adjustment to the like the campus life.
I would also have to agree on that with you. Did you have to do any negotiating for residency programs or jobs that would support your family situation? And if so, how did you go about it?
Um, Not really. Anytime I applied to any of my positions, it was well known, and I talked about it during my interviews that I had a family, and so those programs were already designed to help me with that, because they knew that they were taking on a resident or hiring someone that had kids. So I didn't really have to negotiate.
I think most people will work with you if you tell them your circumstances, but that also means that you're gonna have to be flexible a little bit as well. So, like I know, um, like I know, like in our where I work at, they always ask the residents, male and female, that if you're planning to have a family and if you like, they'll work with schedules. So because if you're not showing up, somebody else has to show up for you. And so being able to like balance that with everyone else, that's like a really important thing for a lot of jobs. I mean, so
This next question is the student wants to get more involved with their school and community, along with maintaining um, their extracurriculars, work-life balance. Do you have any tips on work-life balance on kind of getting that?
Getting more community involvement.
Or like having a good work-life balance while still like or trying to get more involved with like school and community service and all those extracurriculars.
Yeah, I think that approaching it in an incremental way, saying like planning out for the next 6 months instead of a planning out for the next 2 years really helped me to keep my goals and my schedules short, shorter um, goals. I think that also that helped me with balancing and being able to see it laid out that way. Um, it's easy to get overwhelmed and say like I need to take on this big thing, and how am I going to do that in the grand scheme of things, and I think that hinders the process a lot of times because it can be so overwhelming that you don't get started. So that is one thing that I use to keep me balanced, and also knowing that your that your extracurricular activities outside of academics and community things are going to be limited, but they don't have to be non-existent. So you do have to balance some fun in there as well.
Yeah, work-life balance means that you put your studies first and then do the extracurriculars. If you're doing so many extracurricular activities that you start studying at 10 o'clock at night, that's a bad balance because you're not going to be successful. But there's this thing that we all have in our hands. It's called a calendar that we have on our $1,000, and a lot of people don't use it. But you're just going to have to schedule in your timing, your classes, your studying, and everything else in between. So
Yeah. And one thing that does come up sometimes on applications is if you're doing 1,000 things, like if you do like 1,000 tiny things along your journey, I think it's less impactful than if you do like one dedicated thing for a whole year or one dedicated thing for, the whole time you're in undergrad. That I think that's more impactful than trying to do all the things.
And this is kind of going back to your medical assistant experience. Did you have to get a certificate to become a medical assistant first, or did you just go there and they trained you on the spot?
Yeah, I did a trade school. It was like right after high school. I did like a 9-month medical assistant school, and that uh, gave me that certificate under my belt, and so I did that for a little while.
And there's like a few questions related to like scholarships and like kind of applying to those. How are you able to receive scholarships and how much would you say it's contributed to like paying off a need that you had versus like maybe financial aid or grants, or was scholarships like a main component of like how you're able to pay off so much of like your education, or at least undergraduate education?
It was a huge part of when I transferred to UCLA. I got a few like small scholarships through community college, and they were through like the MESA program or scholarships that were available at the local level at community college. Those were on the smaller side and they helped a lot. But my main scholarships were when I transferred. I got the UCLA transfer student scholarship, and that was like a big chunk, and that helped pay off a lot of my education when I was finishing out my UCLA bachelor's degree. So I highly, highly recommend looking into those once you transfer. I think you're on mute.
Thanks for catching that. If you're to have done the surgery route, what specialty would you have done? And what about surgery would have intrigued you?
I just love anatomy. It was like that was my favorite part of medical school was not to be morbid, but I'm a doctor. It was to go into the anatomy lab and and just see the privilege of seeing the human body in a way that most people don't get to see it was just such a phenomenal experience. If I had gone the surgery route, I think I would have been a general surgeon. So you do a lot of like um, internal organ type of surgeries versus like an orthopedic surgeon. That's the route I would have gone.
Do you have any thoughts on MD versus DO? Like if someone were to specialize in anesthesiology, would that be a disadvantage for either of them?
No, they're both medical degrees. So yeah, um, I would apply to I applied to MD and DO schools, so you should apply broadly. It one doesn't put you at a disadvantage when you go to apply to residency.
This student has is asking if you have any advice on how to avoid taking out loans that involve interest. In their religion, paying interest on loans is strictly prohibited.
Oh, interesting. I don't know. I mean, some of the student loans don't have interest, but you max those out pretty quickly if you go to professional school and you're relying on said loans. Um, I don't know of any that don't have interest on top of those, but I would talk with your financial aid office to see what the options are if there's any.
And how long was your residency program and what did it involve?
My residency program for family medicine was 3 years, which is pretty typical for a family medicine residency. Um, we did rotations in obstetrics, so we delivered lots of babies. I delivered about 50 babies. We did days when we were just in clinic, which is the majority of what I do now. We did some experience with the surgery department, limited experience there. And then we also, as a family medicine doctor, you can also take care of patients in the hospital. So we did lots of hospital days where we're taking care of patients in the hospital, doing overnights where we're taking care of the whole floor of patients overnight.
And what advice would you give for a working single mother who finds it difficult to get into summer research programs due to not being able to be away from home for like extended periods of time? Um, are there any ways to make your application stand out without having, while still like managing that and doing like summer programs?
Um, is the question making your application stand out without the research experience?
Um, I think it might be yes. I think it might be like without the research experience.
There are non-residential programs. I don't know where this person lives, but there are non-residential programs you could participate. And non-residential means that you live at home and you do it. I just don't know where this person lives, so I can't really like tell you where, but I know that there's a lot of programs that you could do while living at home. Um, and some of them are just, that you basically, it's kind of like a 9 to 5 that you have to do these research programs. Um, but I don't know where this person lives, so can't really like.
Yeah, that's what I did when I did my undergraduate research program. I went there for the day. It was like a day job and then went home. Was in a residential one. But if you don't have research on your application and you're applying, I would definitely try to get some clinical experience under your belt, which is I think a lot easier to get as a day job or night job, to show that you have some experience in the medical field.
And can you go over what's a postbac program and when would you do a postbac program in like the pre-med pathway?
I don't personally have experience with post-bac program other than knowing friends that have done the post-bac programs. Like I know Charles Drew has a post-bac program. There's lots of different schools that do. A lot of times they are done if you graduate your undergrad and don't have like the highest GPA, or you graduated with a degree in something non-science related and you need to get some more of those classes that will enhance, that prerequisite classes so that you can apply for medical school. That's where a post-bac program can be really useful. And usually they're 1 to 2 year programs. And they also, I believe most of them have research attached to them. Not exactly 100% sure, but I think most of them do. So that would be the route to go if you had those kind of caveats to your current status after you graduate with your undergraduate degree.
Okay, we're like in our last like three questions. So this, do you recommend working during, or did you work at all during medical school? And if so, how many hours did you work?
It's really almost impossible to work during like active medical school. I had a incident happened in my family where I had to take like half a year off of medical school, so I had to delay my graduation by a year, and so that gave me some months off. And so during that time, I was working as a bartender. There were times when I had to supplement my income in residency, and I was a bartender or an Uber driver just to make some extra cash on the side. That's what I had to do. But it's generally almost um, impossible to work during medical school just because your rotations are constantly changing, your schedule is constantly changing, and you need lots and lots of time to devote to studying.
Do you think it's a good idea to do nursing as a pivot before pursuing medicine? This participant is a single mom who um, wants help financially to fund their expenses for med school. So that she's asking if nursing would be a smart pivot before doing medicine.
Um, I mean, it certainly is done sometimes. It will prolong your course into medical school, which, I was the second oldest person to go into my med school class, so there's nothing wrong with being a little bit older when you start. It will give you some clinical experience for sure. But I would also weigh the cost of nursing school. Is that worth taking on and then taking on a medical school loan? That might be a good way to decide if, that might be a good factor to take into consideration with going that route. But I think both ways have pros and cons.
Yeah, the issue that I would just say is that none of your prereqs for nursing are going to be for medical school, so you're going to have to retake those. That might take you 2 years just to retake all your pre-med requirements. Nursing school will probably around $70,000 to $80,000 for 2 years plus living expenses. The other part of it, when you're done, when you start nursing school, your first year as a nurse working, you're basically still going to school. It's kind of like a residency, but you're just getting paid for it. So you work 40 hours a week and you have to do modules and clinical training and like protocols and all of these things. So your first year as a brand new nurse, you're still learning on the job. So there's a lot of things. So you might not be able to take organic chemistry at that time because you're working 40 hours a week and you're putting another 10 hours of like, coming home and studying. And, then you have to like take your, you know, CEN, CCRNA test, and all of those different certifications you need to have. So how are you going to be able to go to school? So these are all like things you're going to have to, and cost and years. So it's like we had someone who, but if you're a nurse today and you want to go into medicine and you're working as a nurse, then yes, it could be done. And those people are very successful. But if you're starting out today and saying, well, I'm going to go to nursing school, then you're looking at least a 5 year, extension on starting medical school. So, um, with the first year and then, prereqs. And so, and then the other thing is you're also going to be limited on how much subsidized loans you could take out, um, even before this whole fiasco that's happened. So, you know, you just limited amount of resources on that end of it. So, and then plus the other thing is as a nurse, yeah, you make like in the Bay Area, you make $100 an hour as a nurse, but if you're in medical school, you can't work. You can't work a 12-hour nursing shift and then go do like your rotations. Like, could you imagine being on surgery rotation and working 1 or 2 shifts a week? It's just it'd just be really hard. But there's people that have done it, so like just you know, but I think they're the outliers more than anything. I had a friend who was a medical student, and was a nurse, was an ICU nurse, and she would work like the first 2 years of medical school, she would work like 2 shifts a month, but but it almost killed her because she fell asleep on the way home driving. So
Oh no.
yeah.
Something to consider.
Anyways, well, Dr. Berger, I don't want to keep you any longer. You've like been here 25 minutes longer, so we're gonna let you go and you answer like 83 questions. So
Oh
that's
wow. My pleasure.
well, thank you again. It was really great seeing you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Berger.